There is a serious battle unfolding in Washington right now, and if you are holding XRP or watching the crypto space closely, you need to understand what is actually happening behind the scenes. Brad Garlinghouse sat down with Fox News, and what came out of that conversation was far more significant than most people are giving it credit for. So let me walk you through everything and give you the full picture. Start with Jamie Dimon, because his opposition to the Clarity Act is not random. JP Morgan runs one of the most profitable payments businesses on the planet. We are talking about $20 billion in annual revenue from that division alone, with profit exceeding $5 billion. When a man who controls that kind of cash flow starts lobbying hard against legislation that opens up competition, you have to connect those dots. This is not about protecting consumers. This is about protecting a business model that has been extremely lucrative for decades. Dimon went on record saying the Clarity Act lacks proper consumer protections and does nothing meaningful for anti-money laundering compliance. Brad pushed back and called that either a deliberate misrepresentation or at best a negligent one. Strong words, but when you look at the history, it is hard to argue. This is the same person who spent years calling Bitcoin a pet rock and dismissing the entire crypto industry as a fraud. Now suddenly he is the voice of consumer protection. The timing is convenient. Brian Armstrong also came up in the conversation, and Brad made a point worth noting. Armstrong speaks for Coinbase, not for the broader industry. That distinction matters because the Clarity Act affects far more than just one exchange, and the lobbying happening around it should reflect that reality. Now here is where things get genuinely interesting, and this is the part of the story most people are sleeping on. Ripple just released an AI developer kit built specifically for the XRP ledger. The idea is straightforward. AI agents are already starting to move money autonomously, and Ripple wants the XRP ledger to be the infrastructure those agents run on. Brad was honest that we are still early. He personally would not hook up an AI agent to his own bank account right now, and that kind of measured thinking from a CEO is actually reassuring. But the groundwork is being laid right now, and that matters more than the hype. Mastercard announced a collaboration involving nearly 30 companies focused on building payment infrastructure for AI-driven systems. Ripple is among those 30. That is not a small deal. When Mastercard starts building in your direction, it signals something real is coming. Ripple Treasury, which recently rebranded from its previous name, is currently moving $13 trillion in transaction volume annually. Here is the important part though. Not a single dollar of that volume is currently flowing through XRP or RLUSD. The entire thesis is that over time, a meaningful portion of that volume shifts onto blockchain. Brad has previously suggested around 30% could make that transition within 5 years. Even a fraction of 13 trillion moving through the XRP ecosystem would be a completely different ballgame than where things stand today. Speaking of RLUSD, the numbers there are hard to ignore. In just the past 30 days, the stablecoin supply on the XRP ledger doubled. It went from roughly 350 million to around 700 million. That kind of growth in a single month is not noise. That is real adoption happening in real time. On the revenue side, Brad confirmed Ripple is approaching $1 billion annual run rate by end of year, and that figure excludes whatever XRP sits on their balance sheet. But here is the part that should make you stop and think. The vast majority of that growth is coming from outside the United States. Brad said it plainly on national television. American banks are not fully leaning into XRP right now because the legal framework is not there yet. Anyone telling you XRP already has all the regulatory clarity it needs domestically is not looking at the actual revenue breakdown. The Clarity Act passing changes that equation completely. It gives institutional players the legal confidence to commit. Right now, a CFO or a bank executive who wants to use XRP for cross-border settlements has to wonder whether a future regulator could come in and dismantle everything they built. That uncertainty kills deals before they start. Clear legislation removes that hesitation. There was one more moment from the broadcast worth highlighting. Hugo Fillion, who founded Flare, made an observation that cuts straight to the point. Years ago, XRP was mocked for being too close to banks and financial institutions. The community was called sellouts for building something that traditional finance could actually use. Fast forward to today, and every single crypto project is scrambling to become the thing Ripple already built. The entire narrative flipped, and the people who were early to that vision are now sitting in a very different position than the critics expected. Ripple is not chasing acquisitions right now. After 2 major purchases last year, the focus is on integration and making sure the pieces they already have are working together properly. Brad described it as digesting what they have before reaching for more. That kind of discipline from a company at this stage of growth usually means they are building something that is meant to last. The regulatory fight is messy, and it will continue to be messy. But underneath all of that noise, Ripple is putting up real revenue numbers, real stablecoin growth, and real institutional partnerships. The foundation is being built whether Washington gets its act together quickly or slowly. When the clarity finally arrives, the infrastructure will already be in place.